Welcome, sir. Namaste.
Welcome, Professor Mishra.
This is Professor, myself, Suneetha, and our head of the department, Deepa ma'am, and then our head of the institution, Nalini ma'am. And we have other faculty members here, as well as the students of MA first year and second year, sir.
Great.
So good afternoon, everyone. Once again, I most humbly welcome the renowned psychologist, Professor Girishwar Mishra ji, who is the speaker today. I also invite our director, Professor Nalini, head of the department, Professor Deepa Mohan, my colleagues from Gitam, and scholars and dear students. As you're all aware, our most esteemed professor, who served till recently as the Chancellor of Gitam, Professor Ramakrishna Rao, is no longer with us physically, but his words, his works, and wisdom will remain with us forever. So we feel that the best way to pay tributes to Sir is by engaging in scholarly presentations and discussions wherein the young minds like you all can participate and learn from. So in this regard, the Department of Applied Psychology, Gitam School of Gandhian Studies, Gitam University plan to invite eminent speakers in the field of Indian psychology as a tribute and part of the Professor K. Ramakrishna Rao Commemorative Lecture Series. Now I invite the director, Professor B. Nalini, to share with us few thoughts in memory of Professor K. Ramakrishna Rao.
Thank you, Suneetha. Welcome, Professor Girishwar Mishra. Professor Mishra, colleagues, students of the School of Gandhian Studies and other invited participants. It is an honor to remember the highly acclaimed contributions of Professor Ramakrishna Rao to the academic world. Professor Ramakrishna Rao has grown to be a national leader in education and psychological research. Professor Rao is a former Chancellor of Gitam and Vice Chancellor of Andhra University. His earlier appointments include Executive Director, Foundation for Research on the Nature of Man, USA, and Chairman, AP State Council of Higher Education, Government of Andhra Pradesh. In recognition of his outstanding research contributions, he was elected 3 times as President of Parapsychological Association, a US-based international society of scientists. He also served as President of the Indian Academy of Applied Psychology. With over 20 books and 300 research publications, Professor Rao contributed toward building intellectual and cultural bridges between East and West, helped to place the discipline of Indian psychology on the international academic map, carried out scholarly studies of yoga, established the Institute for Yoga and Consciousness at Andhra University, provided scientific and systematic interpretations of classical wisdom in contemporary context, and rendered a fresh perspective on Gandhi as today's most relevant thinker. His more recent books include Cognitive Anomalies, Consciousness and Yoga, Gandhi and Applied Spirituality, Psychology in the Indian Tradition with Professor Antarrashtriya, Gandhi's Dharma, Elements of Parapsychology, Foundations of Yoga Psychology, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Colonial Syndrome, the Videshi Mindset in Modern India, Why I Am an Indian, and Srimad Bhagavad Gita, a treatise on counseling, among many others. Professor Rao served as the chairman of the Indian Council of Philosophical Research. He received numerous honors that include the National Award Padma Shri. Professor Ramakrishna Rao thus represents a blend of scholarship and leadership. He has combined creative contributions to advance knowledge with administrative skills and competence. It is in his honor and on behalf of Gitam School of Gandhian Studies that Dr. Suneetha initiated a series of lectures in Indian psychology. It is indeed a privilege for us to host the maiden lecture in this series, to be delivered by Professor Girishwar Mishra, an internationally renowned scholar in the field of Indian psychology. We are grateful to you, Professor Mishra, for consenting to inaugurate the lecture series with your talk on pursuing well-being, insights from Indian psychology. Over to you, Suneetha.
Thank you for the brief presentation about Sir. Now I feel extremely privileged to introduce our guest speaker, Professor Girishwar Mishra ji, who, in spite of other commitments, has readily agreed to deliver on a very interesting and engaging topic, pursuing well-being, insights from Indian psychological perspective. Professor Girishwar Mishra is a well-known social scientist, psychologist, and author who has immensely contributed to the development of Indian psychology. After obtaining MA and PhD in psychology from Gorakhpur University, he was a professor at Gorakhpur, Allahabad, Bhopal, and Delhi universities. Professor Mishra has served in many academic positions, including head of the departments and deans at Delhi and Bhopal University. Apart from backing several research projects from organizations like UGC, ICSSR, and CRT, he has guided successfully 35 research scholars. Professor Mishra was a Fulbright Senior Fellow at the Swarthmore College, Philadelphia, and the University of Michigan. Later, he was also awarded the Fulbright Nehru Lecturer Fellowship. He also served as a Vice Chancellor of Mahatma Gandhi Antarrashtriya Hindi Vishwavidyalaya. He has also served as a convener and the president of the National Academy of Psychology, India. Professor Mishra acted as the chairman of the editorial advisory committee for the 5th and the 6th surveys of psychological research in India, ICSSR. He was also the editorial fellow project on history of Indian science, culture, and philosophy. He also served as editor of psychological studies for 15 years and is currently the special issue editor. Professor Mishra was also the associate editor for the Journal of Cross-Cultural Psychology, consulting editor for many journals, including Indian Psychological Abstracts and Reviews, Psychology and Developing Societies, and Indian Journal of Behavioral Sciences. Professor Mishra has immensely enriched the field of psychology, especially from the Indian perspective, by publishing more than 200 journal articles, papers, book chapters, and more than 40 books. Some of his latest authored, edited, and co-edited books are Psychology in Modern India, Reviews and Explorations, Psychological Interventions for Health and Well-being, Handbook of Psychology in India, Foundations of Indian Psychology, New Directions in Indian Psychology series, and Psychology in India Advances in Research series, to name a few. He has won many honors and awards, including the ICSSR National Fellowship, UGC Research Award, National Award for Social Science, Ramakrishna Award, and Govind Vallabh Pant Award by Home Minister, Government of India. Now, sir, I most humbly request you to deliver the inaugural lecture of Professor K. Ramakrishna Rao Commemorative Series. Over to you, sir.
Om Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Dear Professor Mohan, Dr. Nalini, all the colleagues who have joined this virtual meeting. At the outset, I would like to express my gratitude to Gitam University, not only for inviting me, but for providing an opportunity to give my tributes to Professor Rao. We miss him in terms of his physical presence, but his contributions to different areas of psychology will always provide stimulation for thinking. I have been very fortunate that for the last 2 decades, I could get the guidance, support, and encouragement from Professor Rao. I think the last major contribution by Professor Rao came to the 6th survey of psychology, which I had the opportunity to edit. And that chapter is on the Indian and Western concept of mind. It's very interesting that psychology started with the idea of mind. In its growth, it forgot about that. And it's only in 2019 that the psychology survey in India could get a chapter on Eastern and Western perspectives of mind. I would like to join the tribute given by Dr. Nalini, where she described his contributions. So I will not repeat those contributions. In fact, Professor Rao was looking at a broader perspective, and that perspective was to offer an alternative view of human reality. And I think his major contribution lies in creating, or the better phrase will be, rediscovering the Indian perspective. His major contribution is also in terms of the textbook which he has prepared with Professor Anand Paranjape on psychology in Indian tradition, which was published in 2016, where he has provided an outline of the different domains of psychology. And that is a major contribution. There are many things. I had edited a handbook of psychology in India. And there he wrote a chapter for me, and the title is The Trishula Model. The handbook of Indian psychology was also edited by him with Professor Paranjape and Professor Dalal, where almost all fields of Indian thought are looked into, and attempt is made to see how their contributions can enrich the field of psychology. I can talk about many memories also. They are very interesting. Not only in India, but we had a meeting in Beijing, where I had organized one symposium on Indian contributions, where we discussed different approaches, and that was in the International Congress of Psychology. Subsequently, in Africa, at Cape Town, where we had another symposium and he was there. So his academic presence was vibrant, and he was able to organize thoughts systematically. And he was a great communicator, and with passion, with a kind of impact which he was able to pursue, is something which we need to imbibe, and we need to see how his work can be made available to the wider circle of readers. The theme for today came to my mind when Sangeeta ji asked me to, Suneetha ji asked me to talk about, simply because as an editor of psychological studies, I once requested Professor Rao to write something on Indian perspective on positive psychology. He wrote a beautiful article. It was a target article, and 7 colleagues commented on that article, and then Professor Rao again wrote a rejoinder to that. So all that development was in my mind. He was looking at the link, between the Indian psychological thought and the current thought in positive psychology. So I thought it proper to move forward in that direction. And the quest for peace, harmony, well-being is a kind of involvement which has a long history. Almost all civilizations have been trying to pursue that. All the achievements that we have, they show that, well, how we define our happiness, how we consider the idea of well-being. And today, there are international organizations which, organizations are trying to estimate happiness of nations. So you have happiness index calculated for different countries. And you get an idea that, well, how people are standing across that. Well-being is considered to be a key concern, and positive psychologists like Seligman talk about opening national happiness accounts. And they propose the idea that the government should look after that and help to improve the position on that scale of happiness. Well, we have Bhutan, which has included that as a major part of their policy. So the interest in political, social, psychological arena is very high. Let me mention that positive psychology started around 2000, where many people just considered that Seligman, as the president of American Psychological Association in 1998, emphasized to focus not only on the deficits, not only on the deprivations, not only on the negative aspects of life, but to address the human strengths and to do something to improve quality of life in a big way by focusing on various human strengths. Well, the positive psychology movement has grown in the last 2 decades in a big way. And now there is a department of positive psychology at Pennsylvania University, Philadelphia. A big program is there, and so many handbooks, publications, journals are there, and there is no limit to that. It has gone to all the places. In India too, a lot of work has been done. And in the 6th survey, which I have edited, I have a chapter on positive psychology, a quite long chapter by Professor Seema Mehrotra of Nimhas. What I want to say is that having some kind of positivity in life, improving quality of life, experiencing happiness have become a major concern for psychologists. I think that this concern is not new. In fact, the term positive psychology was used by Maslow in 1968 in his book on personality, growth, and all that. So, humanistic psychology did pay attention to those aspects, but it was marketed, it was celebrated in a big way by Seligman and others. That is part of the story. But if you go through the whole movement of positive psychology, which focuses on improving happiness and offering various ways to have happiness, you will see that all these efforts are practically extension of the modern Western psychology. So it maintains all the components of the positivist paradigm, right? It doesn't differ in its paradigmatic concerns. So it maintains the mainstream psychology and it extends that to the field of positive psychology, and you must be aware of the topics like positive emotions, mapping human strengths. Peterson and others have created a whole system of mapping the human strengths. Seligman himself has started measuring authentic happiness. So all these things are going on. And if you go through the table of contents of Positive Psychology Handbook, you will come across so many areas. I don't want to list those areas, but my only concern is that positive psychology is an extension of mainstream psychology in an area, and people are interested in that because they want peace, they want harmony, they want happiness. But that search for happiness, that search for improved quality of life is located in the Western paradigm of thought and assumptions. This is the background against which I am going to talk about the insights which come from Indian thought. Now, seeking happiness is an important goal. The word for happiness is sukha. And kha means space. And su means good, positive. So sukh means good place and dukh means bad place. Now, sukh and dukh, these terms are very familiar to every Indian. They are Sanskrit terms. You can translate it in pleasure and pain, but they don't give the meaning of sukh and dukh. Now, the major difference between the Indian perspective and Western psychological perspective is that human being is considered in terms of a physical body versus a multi-layered, hierarchically organized structure where physical body is one component. You have a physical sheath, Annamaya Kosh. But that is not all. Your existence is social. Your existence is biological. Your existence is mental or psychological. And your existence is also spiritual. The term spiritual is often confused with a term called otherworldly. That you leave this world, only then you become spiritual. You are talking about something else. I have one submission. Can we think of a model which is more inclusive, which includes spiritual, social, emotional, and physical, biological? The beauty of Indian perspective is that it is more comprehensive. It says that you are not body. You have body. You have hand, you have legs, you have brain. And who is that? The quest for knowing self becomes central. And this self-examination is so central that the Advaita Vedanta says that if you realize that you are Brahman, then you are Brahman. If you understand this, and if you understand that everything is occupied by Brahman, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma, Aham Brahmasmi. These are called Mahavakyas, very profound statements. We don't have time to elaborate that. But the quest for self, and that self which is not merely the bodily self. Body is the residence of that self. Self resides in it. And that understanding is so crucial that Atmanam Vidhi, know thyself, has become a very important concern of entire Upanishadic thought. Almost all schools of thought have tried to understand that. What is the nature of that? The question is very difficult and the answers are also very different. And that was also realized by the Vedic scholars. So they said, Ekam sad vipra bahudha badanti. That reality is one. But different scholars, they approach it from different perspectives and gain different understanding. So there are different views about that one reality. Ekam sat. Vipra, that is Pandits, scholars. Bahudha badanti. They speak in different languages. I am reminded of Gandhiji, who has also mentioned that God is so great that it cannot be completely understood from one perspective. Each perspective has a limitation. Your eyes can see only what is before you. You can't see what is behind you. They are placed like that. Similarly, all different religions have different paths, different ways, different angles. So the vision which they get is limited. That's why his famous song is Ishwar Allah Tero Naam Sabko Sanmati De Bhagavan. I was at Bardha for 5 years, and Gandhiji lived there for 12 years in Bardha. And his ashram is still there, where he lived. And it's almost in the same style. That room, that hut, all that is maintained as it was during his time. A nice place to visit. Gandhiji performed prayer, and that prayer included almost all religions. And that practice is still continuing. In morning and evening, there is prayer, and the prayer includes from Islam, from Vedas, from Zarathustra, from Islam, and all the traditions. It's a very good book. So he was practicing that. And Professor Rao was very fond of Gandhi, and as Nalini ji has already mentioned, the work Gandhi as a person who maintained applied spirituality. He used that. And he I think, practiced that to a large extent in his ideas. The autobiography of Gandhiji has the title, My Experiments with Truth. And if you read that autobiography, you will find towards the end of that I have been in the search of truth. I could have some glimpses of truth, but I have not got complete truth. My life is nothing before that truth. If I get, I can forget about my life. I will dedicate my life. Search for truth. The beauty of his work and his logic was that he said that truth is God. Truth is not the name of God. No, that was his earlier statement. Then he revised that truth itself is God. And that reminds Ekam Sat. Now, Ekam Sat, and there is also a beautiful perspective which comes from Gandhi and his application, where he says that God is expressed in all of us, in human beings. And worshipping God involves Seva, service of others. If you are able to serve others, then you have done service to God. So Seva became a very important component in his life. So trying to find what is truth, reaching to that truth through Seva, and living a life where the principles of Satya, Ahimsa, Asteya, Aparigraha are applied. In Vardha Ashram, it is written that those who live here, they have to follow Satya, Ahimsa, non-violence. They don't have to collect more than what they need. Aparigraha, Asteya, that is no stealing. Now, these are the practices which were required to live, it was part of life. So anybody who goes there, it is required that the person would like to maintain all this. Very interestingly, Gandhiji has never mentioned that it is from Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, if you read that, the yamas include Satya, Hinsa, Asteya, Parigraha, and Brahmacharya. That is the yamas. And that is the basis of morality. That is the basis of ethical principle. Today's life has this burden of corruption. You have all kinds of problems which are taking place. I hope you have some interaction with Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And if you read that, it says, if you have done ahimsa, everybody will love you. And Gandhiji has redefined ahimsa, that ahimsa is not merely non-violence. It is love for others. And the love goes to those who are your enemies. Only then you have real ahimsa. So his love is very complex idea. His ahimsa is a complex idea. It is not only non-violence, but it includes love, negation of hatred. So what I want to say is that in Gandhi, we have a person who is practicing without saying that I am doing Vedanta or yoga or whatever it is. Here we have an example how to live a life. And all of us know about the statement of Einstein, who said that people will not believe that a person like Gandhi was here on this earth. If you read the works, contributions of Gandhi, you will find that there is no other person. You have Buddha, you have Christ, then we find Gandhi. Now, Gandhi says, and his most important, our preferred song is Vaishnava Janato Tene Kahiye Je Peer Parai Jane Re. That person is Vaishnava, that person is a person who is relating to God, who is able to understand or empathize with the pain of the other person. If you are able to do that, then you are the real Vaishnava. The theme for today's discussion is how Indian insights contribute to understanding the quest for happiness and well-being. I have just cited an example for that. So I would like to move from this practice to theory. Gandhi is an example of that practice. How to be happy, how to live a life where there is happiness. Friends, I have a small submission, but to me it seems a very profound submission. I've yet to find that idea in detail. The idea that came to my mind after talking to Suneetha ji, that happiness is not a property of an individual, that you are a happy person. Happiness is not the property of an object. And if you get that object, then you are happy. Normally, we think that happiness lies in the objects or the person is happy. Indian thought is very complex. Indian thought says that by nature you are happy. Your existence includes happiness. It's a tough idea. But Sat, Chit and Ananda, Satchidananda, that is your nature. That is your true nature. And understanding that true nature, that self-realization, puts the practice of pursuing happiness in a very different context. You are not remembering yourself. You are not realizing yourself. And then there is confusion. Then there is a problem. And how you are not realizing? The main reason, whether you go to Buddhism or whether you go to Hinduism, Vedanta, or any school of thought, the reason is that we perceive ourselves not as self, but a self with buddhi, ahankar, and body. We understand that our body is ourself. We understand that whatever we get, all the attachments, they constitute our self. So if the attachment comes, then you are happy. Attachment goes, you are unhappy. So your happiness depends on access to those attachments. It's a big problem. I would like to bring home some of the insights which come from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, a text which is very common and which is still very popular, a text which has received attention from different parts of the world. Bhagavad Gita says, I think it is in the 13th chapter, a beautiful statement. Swabhav is adhyatma. Swabhav is adhyatma. Swabhav means your nature, your prakriti, who you are. That is adhyatma. And adhyatma, if you go into the details of that term, which has been used several times, it talks about understanding self. When you go to yourself. So understanding self becomes the real question. And self is, misunderstood in terms of attachments, upadhis. That is the word used by Shankaracharya. That upadhis come and go, but you remain as you are. Unmoved, achal. So, a wise person discriminates between self and what is not self, what is mere attachment. And by nature, all attachments have to go. They are temporary. And if we bother about them, we have to be in trouble. Because they are troubles. That's why Gita says that Vit Rag Bhaya Krodha. That one should be Vit Rag Bhaya Krodha. Bhaya, fear, Krodh, anger. Rag means attachment. So one has to get rid of these. There should not be confounding. In research methods, we use the word confounding. Our understanding of self is confounded. our understanding is conditioned. Now, if you read the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it talks about a state called Sthita Pragya, a state of steady wisdom. Now, that steady wise person, once wisdom is steady, then that person is not perturbed by loss. Neither he has an elevated mood condition when he has something. And in that state, if you act, then your act will be excellent. That karma, that action is called anasakta karma. You are performing, because performing and acting is something which cannot be avoided. You are eating, you are breathing, they are also acts. Action is something which is equal to life. So you must do proper action. And that is the term anasakta. That you have to act. There is no saying that no, you don't have any scope. Lord Krishna says that when I have to act, I can't get rid of this duty. So action is something which is must. But can you do this act which seems non-act? It becomes so spontaneous that it is not a burden for you. You are engaged in that act and you don't bother about it. You don't bother about its outcome. Action is must. And good action is one where you are doing it so spontaneously that it becomes a normal act for you. So, the quest for happiness should be looked into the state of being wise. That means realizing yourself. Realizing that you are not these objects. You are not these attachments. And you have to live life, so you have to act. Act wisely. Act without any kind of attachment. Well, Gita says, Ashantasya kuto sukham. A person who is agitated cannot experience sukha. No happiness for that person. And the whole analysis says that when you are attached and if you don't get the object which was desired by you, then that frustration will lead anger. That will lead to change of your memory and illusion will be there and ultimately you will perish. So the whole sequence is present. How to live life where you are living without any kind of attachment. That is the demand. Now, this kind of discriminative ability is something which is desired on the part of human beings. One more important thing which Bhagavad Gita talks about and which is an important insight, that our mind is something which very easily adapts to a condition. It goes to some object, a beautiful person or a beautiful food or anything, and it becomes like that. And it quickly adopts to that. It's nature of mind. Chanchala. It moves and very easily adapts. What to do? Again, Bhagavad Gita and also Kathopanishad provide a kind of a metaphor of a chariot, which is quite relevant. That you have various sense organs and there are different objects in the environment. Your sense organs are like horses, and you are controlling. Buddhi is there and Atman is there and the reins are there. If the horses are uncontrolled, they will lead you to any place, right? So that will create a dangerous situation. If you have control over those organs, those horses, then you will be on right path. That again shows the problem of attachment. That these horses, if they go to anything, it will create problem. You can find examples in our life, in everyday life, that is happening. So mind by nature is susceptible to agitation because of attachment, which is a natural tendency. It goes to an object and it becomes like that. So you need to control it. What to do? Gita says that there are two important things to do. One is virakti and the other is abhyasa. So virakti means detachment and abhyas means abhyas of yoga. If there is abhyas of yoga, then you will be in your own state. Then you will be in your own swabhava. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. If you are within yourself, that is also called swastha. That is the meaning of swastha. That you are in yourself. So there is consensus on this idea that you should understand yourself, whether you go to Ayurveda, whether you go to yoga, whether you go to Vedanta. The idea is that don't confuse yourself with objects to which it is connected. And interestingly, there is a book by a professor from Yale University, and the title of the book is The Curse of Self. I hope I have its PDF. I will send it to Suneetha. That book tells, he's a professor of psychology and doing great work in psychology of self. He says that self became a problem. All the mental health problems are problems of self. Depression, anxiety, pain, and loneliness, and this and that, all of them originate there. Actually, psychology has done this, that you must have high self-esteem. That means you think that you are great. Anyway, it's not time to talk in detail about that. But it is an important insight that self has been elaborated in terms of things to which it gets attached. So the challenge for well-being is to develop this discriminative ability and understand that you have an existence apart from these objects. That is the meaning of Swabhav is Adhyatma, or Adhyatma is Swabhav. So our attention should be to understand, to analyze, to find our true nature, which is not understood because of avarana, because of vikshepa. You know, there are many things which create a kind of a obstacle, and you don't find your true nature. That is a challenge. In our life, we do realize this. So the Indian thought invites you to expand your understanding of self, make it more inclusive. It goes beyond the mere bodily existence. It thrives on the idea of Brahman, in the sense that you need to relate to everybody. Bhagavad Gita says that one who sees everything in a connected manner, the term is abhyaya bhav. Abhyaya means one which is not kharch nahi hota hai, no expenditure of that. So it is maintained, it is connected everywhere. That is very important. The surface self which you have is very important to run the life. But that is not you. Your self is broader, more than that. I will conclude by again referring to Gita, which says that self is your biggest enemy and self is your biggest friend. If you are able to control, regulate, organize yourself by yourself, you are doing that, then yourself is your friend. And if you have failed in doing that, then that self becomes your enemy. And that is happening in our life. So I once again take the opportunity of expressing my gratitude to the organizers of this meeting. And I again remember Professor Rao, who has stimulated, who has provided impetus to build Indian psychology in India. It's a pathetic that you are studying psychology, but you are not studying Indian psychology. There are many insights. Gradually, several things are happening, and we hope that our perspective will be expanded and we will be able to realize the dreams of Professor Rao. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for bringing about the important focal points and also the contributions of Indian psychological concepts like self, which are very, very important point to contributing to our well-being. Thank you, sir. Now I would, since we are running short of time, a quick 1 or 2 questions from our students.
Sure.
Anyone can, if anyone has a question, please come forward.
Yes, sir. May I
You are
ask?
audible.
Please.
Yes. Namaste, sir. I am Ravikant, second year student of Applied Psychology. So my question is related to Ashtanga Yoga. So the emphasis more on the practice of Yama and Niyama. So we all know that Yama and Niyama is a basis for any kind of spiritual and worldly practices, be it Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and even in the Naveda Bhakti Marga, when we see Achanam, Vandanam, Padasevanam, all these things, the emphasis of Yama and Niyama, unless these are practiced, whatever, I mean, so many social problems that we are encountering, so many violences, is it what I feel is that there is a lack of understanding over Yama and Niyama. That is Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha, or be it the Niyamas, Saucha, Santosha, Tapas, any of these things, be it the cause of any mental illness that we are, we are seeing in the clinical settings or be it. But how can we take these concepts, Yama and Niyama, to a common, to a layman or people who have no understanding of these concepts, just like how you are saying that some of the concepts are well marketed because so that they can be reached to everyone, be it in the academic setting or be it in the clinical setting or anywhere. So the emphasis, how can we make it more, can be better understood in the context of a mental health disorder, so that if we can practice these things, I think most of the problems, be it worldly or physically or mental problems, can be resolved, I feel. And this is my question, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you for raising a very important issue. The answer is not a clear answer because there are several dimensions to that particular question or query. Let me throw some light on that. I started with an example. The example was given by Gandhi. And in his ashram, on a plate, these 10 vratas are mentioned, that you have to live life like that. And he applied all those things in his everyday life. So you will find Gandhi in the same dress when he is going to meet Viceroy of India, are going to meet a colleague, are going to meet a village wala. It's the same Gandhi. But just think about ourselves. When you go out to market, you have a different dress. Go to college, a different dress. Go to sleep, you have a different dress. How much time we are spending on these things which are totally useless? It's a very difficult question because we have opted for a different lifestyle, which has generated a number of problems. But we are not able to perceive because we don't have the right perspective. Our self is now lying in those objects. Now, it's a big problem. If you want to live a better life, it's up to you. If one wants to die, तो उसको मरना चाहता है, what can be done? You have decided to move in that way. So, ahimsa, satya, etc. are so important that even if you know, it is said that it is on satya that this earth, is maintaining its balance. It's so true. And you find what happens when there is something which goes beyond that truth or satya. What happens? Many things are happening. And what are the consequences of that? So the power of truth or power of non-violence, power of these practices is so obvious that we are not able to see that. It's another puzzle. What to eat, how to live. Brahmacharya means also it includes that you should not indulge in any bad activity. It is controlling yourself. There is a step, since you know about it, pratyahara. Pratyahara means that you have to withdraw your senses. So you need a COVID pandemic to learn about pratyahara. All of us had to live with pratyahara. Sit in your home, don't go outside. Eat whatever is available. For many days we did not have vegetable. So we had dal and that how you pratyahara was imposed on you. But if you are not imposing pratyahara, then what will happen? Pandemic. You see, you have to learn social distancing. So what is happening? What is that? Which is called climate change and problems like that. Why? Because of lack of pratyahara. All big countries and small countries, everybody is following that. So you will have nuclear plant and then it will create pollution, which will not be treated and which will lead to various diseases and all problems. I mean, humanity has to consider what are the options. I don't think there is other option. These, I think you must have read in Maharshi Patanjali's statements. He says that these are Mahabharatas and they are for all time, irrespective of caste, creed, or religion. If you have to save this earth, if you have to save this humanity, you need to observe that. If you simply call it Hinduism and this and that and call it, that is the problem with us. The label that you give, dhyana is not understood or understood improperly. But when someone comes from America and says mindfulness, meditation, then you will sit and pay attention to that. So our mind is colonized. We are not able to recognize our own knowledge. That is again the question of self-realization. So it's a big challenge. You have to change the mindset of the people. We don't have a right understanding of good and bad. So there is no dharma. I don't want to be called as a Hindu wala or Hindutva wala or this or that, but that is the reality. If you want peace, if you want harmony, if you want that people should live together, then these are the Mahabharatas. The term Mahabharata is given by Patanjali that it is for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So now
Thank you so much, sir.
I now take the pleasure in thanking Professor Girishwar Mishra ji for readily agreeing to spend time with us and also very nicely explaining the Indian concepts about well-being. Thank you, sir. I'm also thankful to the director, HOD, and faculty, scholars, other members who had joined us, students, for participating and making this in this commemorative lecture. I'm also thankful to the Gitam management for making this possible. Thank you all. Namaste.
I also thank you for organizing this meeting of minds. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Namaste.
you, sir.
I hope some of these ideas will provide some stimulus to think. They will provoke. Thank you.
Yes, certainly. Namaste. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, dear students.